A peaceful morning in Florida. A young woman drives to her fiancé's house, carrying a birthday gift. But when she arrives, there's no answer. No one opens the door. And behind that door was something that would haunt her for the rest of her life. He was lying there, motionless, covered in blood. No sign of life. A murder carried out in broad daylight. No witnesses. No warning. And the killer? A man who turned a former love into a deadly obsession. He planned the murder from the shadows, taking notes on every step, every second, every shot. Today's story is about Patrick de la Cerda, a young man brutally murdered by a jealous and deranged ex-boyfriend, Gregory Bender. A case involving a handwritten murder plan, chilling death threats, and a courtroom drama that shook the entire nation. Jessica Devnani, 29, was a bank employee living in Orlando, Florida, just about 30 miles from Deltona, where Patrick lived. But this story doesn't begin in Deltona. It begins in 2009, when Jessica was just 23. She met Gregory Bender through a dating app. He was nearly 20 years older than her, a significant age gap. But in return, Bender was the kind of man you often see in movies: successful, intelligent, attractive, and seemingly stable, at least on the surface. Nothing seemed off, so they started dating. A relationship that lasted 8 years. 8 years is more than just a number for a young woman. It's her youth. It's enough time to get married, have children, and build a career. And Jessica devoted every precious moment of it to a man who tried to control everything about her: her schedule, her relationships, her clothing, her emotions. Nothing escaped the grip of Gregory Bender, a master manipulator. Things began to unravel in early 2016 when Jessica accidentally discovered a horrifying secret. Gregory Bender had been married to another woman, Dira Sanchez, for a long time, and Jessica had no idea. When confronted, Bender didn't apologize. He didn't panic or show remorse. Instead, he calmly explained it away as a marriage of convenience, claiming it was just to help Sanchez's child get into a better school district. A reason that might sound noble if you didn't realize it was just one of hundreds of manipulation tactics he used to ensnare his victims. But this time, Jessica didn't stay silent. She gave him an ultimatum. If he didn't get a divorce by the end of the year, she would leave for good. He did nothing, and Jessica kept her word. They broke up. Just 1 month after that painful breakup, Jessica met Patrick de la Cerda. Patrick, 25, was described by friends as movie star handsome, the kind of guy you'd proudly introduce to your mom on the first date. He worked hard in construction alongside his father, put his family first, lived honestly, and most importantly, gave Jessica the things she had longed for over the past 8 years: kindness. No lies, no control, no manipulation. To her, Patrick was the light after years of darkness. And when Jessica talked about Patrick, she called it love at first sight, a connection so intense they quickly got engaged, ready to build a future together. Just 2 months before the tragedy, Patrick proposed to her at his home in Deltona, a small, cozy space, nothing like Bender's multi-million-dollar mansion, but full of hope. They dreamed of a quiet life in West Palm, close to Patrick's mom, with a few kids and a garden. A simple, beautiful dream anyone would want. But that dream was stolen in the cruelest way, and the man who destroyed it was Gregory Bender. After Jessica and Patrick got engaged, everything felt like a fresh start for them. But for Gregory Bender, it was a collapse. He couldn't accept that Jessica, the woman he had controlled for 8 years, had dared to walk away from a relationship. Worse yet, she was happy without him. And that's when the obsession began. About 5 months after the breakup, Bender found Patrick de la Cerda's Facebook account. One click, just a single click, was all it took to ignite a firestorm of jealousy and rage within him. From that moment on, the gates of hell were opened. The first message Bender sent to Patrick was chilling. "I know where you live. I will harm you." This wasn't a vague threat. It wasn't a burst of anger. It was the calculated warning of someone who had been planning something dark for a long time. He then left Jessica a series of voice messages. His voice was raspy, deliberate, almost like he was reciting a plan he had already written down. "I'm giving instructions, and I will carry out my plan." When Jessica asked what plan he was talking about, Bender responded coldly, "I'm going to hire a hitman, or I'll do it myself." Faced with escalating threats, Jessica and Patrick refused to sit still and wait. They gathered all the evidence, messages, voice recordings, and full record of the harassment and brought it to court. And, surprisingly, they were granted a restraining order against Gregory Bender. The order required Bender to stay away from both of them, and more importantly, he was to surrender all of his firearms to law enforcement. At the time, Jessica and Patrick finally breathed a sigh of relief. They believed the justice system had stepped in. We're finally safe. They truly believed Gregory Bender would disappear and leave them alone. But that was a mistake. A fatal mistake. Gregory Bender never turned in his guns, and the police didn't have probable cause to search his home and confiscate the weapons. The law didn't allow them to act, despite knowing he was in clear violation of the restraining order. It was a deadly loophole, and one that Patrick's family still can't forgive to this day. In fact, on the very morning of the murder, Bender messaged Jessica, yet another blatant violation of the court order. But before anyone could react, the tragedy had already struck. Now, let's go back to the morning of February 27, 2018. Patrick de la Cerda woke up in his small home in Deltona, where he and his fiancée, Jessica, were preparing to build a new life together. They had just gotten engaged and were awaiting the delivery of a permanent engagement ring, a gift that wasn't just valuable, but symbolic of everything they dreamed of. But they didn't know that the man who once obsessed over Jessica hadn't disappeared. He was getting closer, step by step, with a plan. Gregory Bender didn't act out of sudden rage. He was calculated, like a man preparing for a military operation. And the proof was in a spiral notebook that police would later find in his home. Inside were chilling details: how to approach, how to ambush, how to erase every trace. In his mind, this wasn't just a murder. It was a performance, one where he played both director and killer. That morning, Bender called Max, Patrick's father, pretending to be a delivery man. "Hi there. I've got a package for Patrick. Is he home?" Patrick was expecting an important delivery, and Bender knew it. This was the perfect bait. Max had tried calling Patrick to let him know, but no one picked up. Meanwhile, Bender was already hiding in the bushes near the entrance to Patrick's property. He knew Patrick would come to the door, and he knew exactly where to stand to take the young man's life. In the notebook, he had even drawn a diagram of the house, marking ambush points, irrefutable evidence of his obsession and cold precision. Patrick opened the door. He didn't notice anything unusual, but he would never make it back inside.
Some hunts stay with you, not because of how many you take down, but because of who you face. Early afternoon, we crossed paths with an old wild boar. Bigger than average. Coarse, dark gray coat. Tusks curved like size. It didn't run. It looked straight at us. Everything happened in seconds. I squeezed the trigger. One shot hit the leg. The next straight through the chest. The beast collapsed, body thrashing violently before going still. That wasn't just a target. That was a former king of this forest.
A literal step-by-step murder manual, like instructions for assembling IKEA furniture, only this was for ending a man's life. Turn off the phone. Wear gloves. Tape the soles of your shoes to avoid leaving prints. Approach via dirt path on side of house. Destroy clothing after. And written clearly, Patrick de la Cerda's name, his address, the time of the attack. That was when the pieces started coming together. First, the shell casings. At the scene, investigators had found 2.300 blackout casings, a rare, high-powered rifle round typically used in AR-15s. In Bender's home, they found matching ammo, and in his desk drawer, a casing identical to the ones found near Patrick's body. The rifle was missing, but the bullets spoke for it. Second, the burner phone. Bender's regular phone was at home, but detectives discovered he'd used a throwaway burner phone, the same one used to impersonate a delivery driver when calling Patrick's father that morning. Cell tower data placed the phone near Patrick's home at the exact time of the murder. Third, Jessica's testimony. She provided voicemails of Bender threatening revenge, recordings of him laying out a plan, and even a recorded phone call arranged by police where Bender denied involvement, but slipped up and mentioned details only the killer could know. And finally, the missing pieces became the loudest evidence. Patrick's computer and the hard drive from his security system were gone. No one else even knew they existed, except Bender, and he had every reason to erase them. The absence became the evidence. In the end, with the notebook, the cell data, the ammo, Jessica's cooperation, and one trash can, detectives had everything they needed to build a full picture of a chilling, calculated murder. Gregory Bender was arrested and brought to trial. And you have to ask yourself, if Dira hadn't come forward, if one detective hadn't looked in that trash can, if just one bullet casing had been missed, would this case have ever been solved? Gregory Bender is the textbook definition of a wolf in sheep's clothing. Educated, wealthy, respected, at one point even loved. He had all except one crucial thing, the ability to let go of control. To Bender, Jessica wasn't a real person with feelings, agency, or the right to choose. No, she was an object, a possession, something he owned, something he believed he had the right to control, forever. So when that possession dared to walk away, dared to find happiness with another man, Patrick de la Cerda, this wasn't about jealousy. This was about ego. His warped, narcissistic pride had been shattered. And for someone like Bender, someone with a deep need for dominance and control, that was intolerable. Think about it. For 8 years, he lied to Jessica, manipulated her, even married another woman in secret, all while keeping Jessica around as a backup plan. A toy he could pick up whenever he pleased. When she finally left, he didn't grieve. He didn't reflect. Because grief, guilt, regret, emotions like those don't exist in Bender's mind. Instead, he started planning. Not because of love, but because of bruised ego and a pathological obsession with control. And that's what makes this story so terrifying. Bender didn't kill Patrick in a moment of rage. He calculated it. He studied. He stalked. He sat down and wrote a murder plan like he was preparing for a military op. He knew exactly where Patrick lived. He knew the dirt path behind the house and whether it had cameras. He taped the soles of his shoes to avoid prints. He used a burner phone to hide his location. And he did it all in chilling silence, cold, calm, methodical. What you're seeing here is a psychological profile straight out of a nightmare. Bender may have suffered from narcissistic personality disorder, a belief in his own superiority, an inability to handle rejection, and a total lack of empathy. Obsessive control disorder, the pathological fear of losing influence over others, treating people as possessions. Long-term stalking behavior, threatening messages, surveillance, impersonation, manipulation, all the red flags ignored. Until it was too late. These traits didn't act randomly. They were part of a system, a twisted framework he had nurtured over the years. And when the last thread of morality snapped, the killing plan was born. But perhaps the most unsettling part was what came after the murder. There was no remorse, no panic, no breakdown. He acted as if nothing had happened. Still calm, still in control. Even in court, as evidence mounted page by page, bullet by bullet, voice by voice, Bender just sat there emotionless, as if watching a movie that had nothing to do with him. As if Patrick's death wasn't even worth reacting to. The only time he cried was when Dira, his ex-wife, the woman he once thought was safe, stood up in court and testified against him. Those weren't tears of guilt. They were tears of betrayal. Gregory Bender is a chilling reminder. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who hide their true nature the best. We've just unpacked the twisted mind of Gregory Bender, how he turned a woman into property, and built a cold-blooded plan to eliminate what he saw as an obstacle. Now, let's witness the place where everything was laid bare, the trial of Gregory Bender. Day 1 of the trial. The courtroom was stretched tight like a wire. Prosecutor Ashley Twilliger opened with a statement as sharp as a blade. Patrick de la Cerda was the victim of a murder that was calculated, deliberate, and cold. She walked the jury through Patrick's tragic final moments, bullet by bullet. Head, face, chest, hip, each one like a line from Bender's written execution orders. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment killing. This was an execution, one Bender had scripted for himself. Then came Jessica Devnani, the woman Bender once loved, possessed, and threatened. Now, she stood on the witness stand, courageously describing to the jury what it was like to live under his obsession and threats. She read chilling texts that no one should ever receive from someone who once claimed to love them. Think about it. If I don't hear from you, or the police don't call me, I'll do what I said I'd do. And while Jessica spoke her truth, Bender's defense team flailed. They tried to discredit her by showing footage of her having dinner with Bender in November 2017. As if one dinner could erase years of manipulation and fear. What's worse, those videos were secretly recorded by private investigators hired by Bender himself. Yet again, his obsession with control was exposed. Jessica explained the meeting. He told me if I met him, he wouldn't hurt anyone. One sentence, and the entire relationship was laid bare. It wasn't love. It was survival. When smearing Jessica failed, the defense turned to Patrick's father, Max de la Cerda. They tried absurdly to suggest he might have been involved in his son's death, all based on minor inconsistencies in his timeline that day. That wasn't strategy. It was desperation. And when Max took the stand, the courtroom braced for a showdown. But in the end, the evidence and the testimony of Bender's ex-wife, Dira Sanchez, left no doubt. Justice prevailed. And that was when Bender cried. The only time. Not because he felt guilt. Not for Patrick. Not for the family he shattered. No, he cried because Dira, the woman he once considered safe, had turned on him. It was a direct blow to his narcissistic ego. A fracture in the illusion of control he clung to. Throughout the trial, Bender remained cold. No remorse. No reaction. Even when the most graphic details of the murder were presented, not a single flinch. Only during a recess, he leaned over and whispered to someone in the courtroom, "I love you." Even on trial for murder, he was still playing a role, the victim, the lover, the misunderstood soul. But never the one thing that mattered, remorseful. Bender chose not to testify, his legal right, sure. But more likely, a way to shield himself from being cross-examined and exposed any further. After 4 long days of testimony, the case went to the jury. Jessica had said she hoped the verdict would end Bender's reign of terror. And finally they delivered it, guilty. First-degree murder. The sentence, life in prison, without parole. When the verdict was read, Bender's face didn't move. No emotion, as if he knew the game was over. Gregory Bender will never walk free again. A fitting end for a man consumed by obsession and hollowed out by control. So, the Gregory Bender case has come to an end. The verdict is in. Justice has been served. But you know, once pain has carved itself into the hearts of the living, even justice, no matter how complete, can't heal everything. Patrick de la Cerda, a kind young man engaged with a full life ahead. And in one single morning, it was all ripped away. One man decided that Patrick's life didn't get to continue. His parents, Max and Patricia, didn't just lose a son. They lost a future. Max said, "I never got to say goodbye." And so, he kept Patrick's house. Untouched. Everything exactly as it was the last day Patrick was alive. As for Patricia, Patrick's mother, she once dreamed of grandchildren, of wedding bells, of laughter. Now all she has is silence, and a photograph etched in stone above her son's grave. For 3.5 years they had no voice. Only when the trial began were they truly heard. And every word they spoke felt like a tear in the heart. Then there's Jessica. She didn't just lose her fiancé. She lost her sense of safety. She lost part of herself. She was the one who found Patrick's body. She said, "My mind refused to believe what my eyes were seeing." Her future gone. Her world shattered again. For years before the murder, Gregory Bender loomed over her like a shadow, watching, threatening. Even after his arrest, Jessica couldn't sleep. The fear didn't end with handcuffs. It lingered. In her mind, and in the nightmares that never left. But Jessica didn't let the pain define her. She still wears the engagement ring Patrick gave her. And when she took the witness stand, she didn't flinch. She stood tall, head high, and looked straight at the man who tried to destroy her life. "I will live for Patrick." A promise not to forget, but to remember, to love, to fight. This case, if you look closely, isn't just about a crime. It's a warning about jealousy, about obsession, about how an ordinary person can become a killer just because they couldn't handle losing something they believe they owned. Do you think crimes rooted in obsession and control are becoming more common in today's world? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to hear more strange, dark, and sometimes unbelievable stories, don't forget to hit that follow button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.